At its surface, Overwatch seems like a simple enough game. Attack, defense, get kills, and win team fights. That being said, there are actually tons of Overwatch advanced concepts that are only privy to the higher ranks of play. You see, Overwatch, unlike games like Dota and CSGO, the vast majority of players don't understand many of the fundamental Overwatch concepts that you need to know. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the top 11 Overwatch advanced concepts that GM and Overwatch League pros use. Then we're going to give you tips and tricks on how you can use these advanced concepts to exemplify your game and become that much closer to becoming that top 500 player. With all that being said, let's just jump right into it, shall we? Now for the first Overwatch advanced concept, I'm going to kick it off with a concept that many of you might not know, but is incredibly powerful if you can master it. The advanced concept in question is called squeezing, and it's an incredibly powerful concept to understand that you could start implementing in your games right away, particularly for supports with defensive ultimates. The idea behind squeezing is waiting to use your defensive ultimate abilities for as long as possible until you absolutely have to, so that it proceeds through the mid fight or longer in the mid fight. Let me explain. Your allies have all taken about 25% damage and you know they're going to take more. To counteract this, you pop Transcendence and heal your allies up to full and they fight. After the first little bit of your Transcendence, you retreat back to better positioning and the ultimate is over, but the team fight is still ongoing. What squeezing emphasizes is using that little bit of wiggle room for when the Transcendence needs to be activated to when it can be activated to still save your team. You didn't need to activate your Transcendence right when your team took damage. As long as you calculate how much damage they're taking and how far away you are from your allies, you could pop Transcendence later in the fight when your allies are more close to critical and still save them all the same, getting more Transcendence healing and still sustaining your team through longer in the mid fight. This is incredibly powerful on both Transcendence and Beat and is not only applicable to support ultimates, however that's the most applicable. An example to squeeze play in another way is using Nano Blade when the enemies have already expended their resources, such as things like bubbles and stuns. Squeeze playing is using these abilities late on purpose after the enemy has used all their abilities already. The way to make squeeze plays more effective is trying to allow your enemies to get the least amount of value with their abilities on purpose, because you're purposely holding back with the intent to use your abilities late in the fight. This is an incredibly hard concept to grasp, and I don't blame you for not being able to get it perfect right in every game, but just keep in mind that beating when your allies are at 80% health is automatically going to be worth less value than waiting 3 seconds, and beating when your allies are at 20% health, your beat will get much more value on average. Now moving on to the next Overwatch advanced concept we're going to talk about. This one's a relatively well understood one, but I need to emphasize it here as well. Natural cover. This one is vastly important, and this is one of the biggest ones that people are failing on at every rank in the new breakable shield meta. Do not rely on your main tank's shield in order to protect you. Their shield can come down at any time. Relying on your Rein to hold up his shield so you don't get headshotted by their Widow, or simply getting volleyed by a Zenyatta. While there are certain times that you want to take up and push space, you need to understand that a lot of your tanks want to save that viable resource of their shield health for when the engagement actually starts. This means using natural cover is most vital. Natural cover is like a permanent shield that you get to peek from constantly, and try to make it so you're always standing within natural range of it. This is why the high ground is so powerful, because simply backing up on the high ground gives you natural cover from the low ground, and that means that you get to choose the engagements and you get to dictate when and where you pursue the enemy, and it's really hard for them to pursue you as well unless they have specific abilities that allow them to do so. Now moving on to the next advanced concept on our list, we got staggering. Now this is one that it's really hard to do as a solo player. However, as you rank up, people will understand this concept better. So the more people that learn about this concept now and implement it in their games, the better off you'll be. And when up against certain enemies, you can actually stagger them on purpose. Enemy Mercies or Divas at a suit can be great stagger targets. Sleep dart them, wall them off. You do not have to finish these characters off because they have no capability to fight back, and they can easily be killed later on in the fight. So if the enemy try to regroup with them and engage, you can kill them right when the fight starts and start a 5v6, or the enemy team will simply wait to regroup with them and you get more time off the clock. Now, something important that you need to think about is there's specific characters that you should never stagger. One, you don't want to be staggering enemies that could be getting tons and tons of ult charge. This means something like a Zen or a Lucio. If they get a volley off into your head over and over again, they might not only be able to get their ultimate, but get a pick as well. This is why staggering things like DPS is incredibly problematic, because if you try to stagger an enemy Widowmaker and she gets a headshot and grapples away, you could end up in a situation where the enemy team pushes in, saves that Widowmaker, and fights the fight with advantage. Be very careful when staggering, but at the same time, don't fail to utilize this insane concept. It could definitely win you some team fights for free. You know what else you shouldn't fail to utilize? GameLeap.com. Now wait, before you skip, I'm gonna make this short and sweet. GameLeap.com has tons of videos just like this. If you want to see more, come check us out. And if you want to learn more about GameLeap, wait to the end of the video. I break it down there. Hope you enjoyed the rest of the video. Now moving on to the next advanced concept on our list, we have counter-ulting. Now a lot of times in team fights, you want to ult proactively, but there could be a downside to this. Counter-ulting is incredibly powerful, especially on defense on 2 CP points where you have spawn advantage. What I'm saying here is if the enemy team is dry pushing into you and you use all your ultimates on defense, this allows them to ult onto you later without you having the ultimates to fight the preceding fight and trade out. Remember, on defense on 2CP, all you want to do is trade and you have spawn advantage so that you can get back to point. What you can wait here is have a proactive combo, something like Grab Dragon, and wait for the enemy to actually engage ults onto you, such as Nano Blade, Sigma ult, any sort of proactive ult that they want to invest in, and you counter ult them with Grab Dragon. This ensures that you get picks into the enemy, but at the same time, they already invested resources as well, essentially making the resources they invested mute, and you get value out of it. Now, what I talked about before is this is direct opposite of the next advanced concept on our list, which is dry pushing, that you need to understand how to maximize as well. A lot of times, to effectively understand how to dry push, you need to push onto the enemy team with intent to have value and force out enemy ults. If you dry push in casually without intent, the enemy will not use any ultimates and they'll just simply grind more ultimates in the process. The idea behind dry pushing is you don't invest ultimates, but you force the enemy to use tons of ultimates into you. This means trying for an extremely proactive strategy or trying to punish enemy positioning very proactively so that they have to use ultimates onto you is definitely the best way to be. The best thing that you could do is play in a way that's expressly powerful, but that could be easily countered by an enemy's ultimate. And essentially, you're playing in a way that's proactively strong, but the enemy's ultimate can shut it down, so they want to use it. Think about this for an example. You push in as a team and you stack incredibly close together against a Mei. You're pushing together the whole time, and while this strategy could be very powerful, the Mei wants to use her ultimate because of just how stacked you are together. This is part of your proactive plan to get the enemy to use Mei ult in a specific way that allows you to bait out ultimates. You could apply this to all kinds of different ultimates, but think about playing in a way that's proactively powerful while at the same time being weak to some of the ultimates that the enemies might have. Now, these next two advanced concepts I can go through really quickly, but let me break them down. Firstly is resetting. Now, resetting is something that you definitely need to get right each and every time. If your team have already lost the fight, what you want to do as quickly as possible is jump off the map. If you can't jump off the map, you want to play in a way that gets the enemy to kill you as quickly as possible. Now on 2CP, the best way to get enemies to kill you is by proactively doing damage to them as much as possible and trying to get the most amount of value because they'll want to shut you down and kill you. This doesn't mean using abilities like Ice Block or trying to dodge enemy abilities. This means just doing as much raw damage as possible. Now, resetting is incredibly important on payload maps, and this is where I see the biggest problems when it comes to ranked play. If you're fighting defense for payload and the enemy starts to get picks, what you need to do is aggressively die on cart. Teams that don't aggressively die on cart can allow the enemy team to win a point in maybe one fight when it should have taken 3. When I mean aggressively die on cart, I mean aggressively push at it. I don't care if the enemy's trying to kill you. I don't care if the enemy does kill you. But you should be pushing your body straight to point. Not dodging enemy abilities, not trying to juke them out or go behind natural cover. Straight to point as quickly as possible. You're with the mindset of dying on point. You fight for the point and you get to the point, death included. This makes sure that you either get to the point and stall it out or the enemy kill you as quickly as possible, both of which is what you want. What you do not want is to get staggered all throughout streets and get one single fight throughout streets when you were supposed to have 3. If you can resonate with the bitterness in my voice about this specific concept, smash that like button and let me know in the comments down below, because I'm sure that you've had tons of teammates that have completely failed to understand the concept of resetting for a full team fight. Now moving on to the next advanced concept on our list, we have a quick one. This is stacking. This is a stat call that I think everyone should understand as a concept. A stat call is really simple. All it is saying stacking and then an object, and the whole team stacks to that objective. Let's say something like stack point or stack payload. This is a really simple objective and a really fast call that allows your allies to understand exactly what you want. You could even say something like stack grind, something that's incredibly fast and simple, but it's a concept that I want the overall community to understand because a stack call is useful in scrims and it's very powerful in ranked as well, and the majority of people should understand this call because it can be really powerful. Now moving on to the next advanced concept on our list, we have claiming space. Now I know that this is a term that's thrown around time and time again, particularly to main tank players, that you need to claim space and what space even means altogether. Essentially, what space is the areas on the map that you want to control that your team can effectively push to and do damage from. Think about space as advantaged positioning that you and your team get to hold. Relaying it to a CSGO concept, if you're aiming down the sights of an AWP long ways, you're controlling that whole space. If any enemies want to push through it, they're instantly under contact with the long sights that you control. In Overwatch, tank players want to claim that space by pushing through and pushing up, allowing your DPS to take space and contest other spaces. Essentially, while the tanks claim space, DPS can help contest that space and claim even more space from the space that's created by the tanks. This is a really vital concept to understand because this is essentially what Overwatch is about. It's all about vying for space and punishing enemies for entering your space or contesting space. Now moving on to the next advanced concept on our list, we have ability management. This one is so vital for people, especially at the lower ranks, to understand, and it's the biggest atrocity that I think is probably keeping anyone that's gold or below from ranking up past their rank. Ability management is simply using your abilities with intent each and every time and saving abilities when you need them. Sure, it might be sweet to lob a nade at a really far away target, but that completely ignores it for when you need it when you take poke damage. Sure, you might want to just spam your nade when an enemy is peeking the corner, but if an enemy Doomfist dives you, you're not going to be able to sleep dart him and live. Ability management means saving your abilities for when you need them and using them with intent. You don't want to waste all your abilities and not have them for the key opportune moments. You really need to evaluate risk versus reward here. What's the probability of you hitting your sleep dart on that player across the map? And what's the value that you even get out of it? Now, what's the risk involved? Is there anything on the enemy team that could punish you for not having sleep? Maybe saving your sleep for the more guaranteed value and the ability to punish an enemy is better than trying to get this one-off value and trying to sleep an enemy off the map that you do not know if you'll even be able to follow up on. Now, moving on to the second to last advanced concept on our list, we have ultimate advantage. And this is one of the biggest things that defines pro play and ranked play alike. Understanding who has advantage and what causes advantage is the biggest thing you need to understand. The biggest thing to decide advantage is numbers. A 6v5 is an advantaged fight. That one's pretty obvious. What about a 6v4 or a 6v3? Heavily advantaged. That being said, what ultimates do is ultimates can turn numbers advantage. Let me explain. A nanoblade might be worth 3 kills and can turn a fight that's a 3v6 because you can make that fight even. Essentially what I'm saying is investing ultimates can mean that numbers advantage does not matter, and having ultimates means that numbers advantage matter even less. Now, to emphasize this, if you're fighting a full 6 team comp against a team that has no ultimates, and y'all all use your ultimates, you're going to have so much potential value and pick potential with your ultimates, you're probably going to win the team fight outright. That being said, sometimes it's not necessary. If the enemy team is down a player and y'all invest Nanoblade into it, you don't need to invest any more ultimates to guarantee the team fight. Even if the enemy team invests 1 or 2 ultimates, the Nanoblade plus your already inherent advantage is enough to win that team fight. Evaluating whether or not the enemy team has ultimate advantage can allow you to understand when the enemy team is truly weak, because while it looks like a 6v6 or a 6v5, in reality, it might be a 6v5, but the enemy team has 4 ults to your 1. Keeping track of ultimates and understanding what ultimates can bring out what amount of value can be a way to understand when and where you should take team fights and when it's better to regroup with your team before pushing your advantage. Now, moving on to the last advanced concept on our list, we have sustain, and this is a very important one to get right. What sustain is the act of constantly healing your tanks and DPS to fight as a full fighting force without spawn advantage or health packs. Essentially, sustain is the only way that a full team, trying to push a 2CP into heavy spawn disadvantage can keep fighting the fight at full fighting force with full health. They get constantly healed up by the healers, and that is the source of their sustain. The sustain is important to understand in 2 ways. If the supports are no longer around, the enemy tanks don't have sustain. Even if you're winning and getting picks, over time, if the point is stalled out, they'll have no way to fully heal themselves, and they'll eventually die as a result of not being able to sustain the fight and their influence over the fight. This is why, as a DPS player, looking to pick off the supports can be incredibly powerful, because you shut down the source of sustain and you don't allow them to permanently heal up the tanks in their 2CP disadvantaged fight. This is also why that as a support on a 2CP point, sometimes you don't want to be playing directly on point. You are so vital in keeping your tanks alive. If you, due to your poor positioning, allow yourself to get punished by an enemy DPS or an enemy tank, you prevent the flow of sustain and you automatically lose a team fight. While this concept is not new, I see many players completely misunderstanding why this concept is so important to understand and how that can massively affect your play. You know what else massively affects your play? Going to GameLeap.com. GameLeap.com has the best guides that can help you become a better player from the ground up, to climb rank after rank and become that self-actualized GM player that I believe that you could be. I get Discord messages again and again from people that have been playing far too long and feel like they can improve. GameLeap.com has in-depth guides that will make sure you improve, and we have coaches dedicated to do this. You don't have to take my word for it. GameLeap.com offers a 10-day money-back guarantee, so come check us out risk-free in the links here. Anyways, I hope this advanced concept guide has been helpful for you. A lot of these concepts are something that I feel that the Overwatch community should understand as a whole. The Overwatch community doesn't really reflect a lot of the other esports communities in the game. Stuff like Dota and CSGO, where the vast majority of the players, even at the lower ranks, understand all of the advanced concepts that go into a game. I want the whole community to understand these, and if you know them when other people don't, you can use that knowledge to get you tons and tons of wins. I know it. If you have any questions about these concepts, I know not all of them are intuitive, and some of them I couldn't explain fully because this is not a, I don't know, hour-long video, so definitely ask me in the comments down below. And if there's any content that you want me to make, please let me know. I would love to make in-depth guides, supports, advanced concepts, tank guides. Just let me know. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time.